The scent of antiseptic and the hum of cryogenic machinery filled the private museum wing of the Stellar Dynasty's flagship. Lyridian Ve Tessari, heiress to the 7th Dominion fortune, traced her 6-fingered hand across the frosted glass of the preservation chamber. Inside floated what the auction catalog had described as the final preserved specimen of a once promising species. "Exorbitant, even for your tastes," remarked Kyliox, her chief advisor, mandibles clicking in disapproval. 3 billion credits for an extinct curiosity? Lyridian's iridescent eyes narrowed. The humans were architects of their own demise, yet they created wonders the Dominion still cannot replicate. Their genetic ingenuity alone. Genetic folklore, Kyliox scoffed. The annals of the conquered clearly state their civilization collapsed from resource wars before achieving true genetic mastery. A smile played across Lyridian's lilac lips. The annals were written by the victors, old friend. When the rest of her entourage departed, Lyridian activated the private access terminal. Her family hadn't amassed wealth across 12 star systems by accepting official histories. The research vessel that had recovered this specimen, this man, had discovered anomalies. His cellular structure contained modifications far beyond what the Dominion archives claimed humans had achieved. The cryopod's monitor displayed his designation. Specimen 70, Orion Vesh, recovered from Research Outpost Proxima 3. Her scaled fingers danced across the terminal, accessing classified files her fortune had purchased alongside the specimen. There it was. Genetic sequencing that shouldn't exist. Cellular regeneration capabilities that defied explanation. Neural pathways structured unlike any known species. The human's eyes suddenly snapped open. Lyridian gasped, stumbling backward. Impossible. The stasis field couldn't be penetrated by consciousness. Yet those startlingly alert eyes, a color she'd never seen before, tracked her movement. "Your kind was declared extinct 67 cycles ago," she whispered, approaching the chamber again. "The Dominion's histories say the last human died, fighting the purge." The human's lips moved behind the breathing apparatus, forming words she couldn't hear. Lyridian hesitated only briefly before pressing the communication interface. His voice rasped through the speaker. "The histories are wrong." A shiver ran through Lyridian's spine. The specimen shouldn't be conscious, let alone speaking. Her finger hovered over the security alert, but curiosity, the same curiosity that had built her family's empire, won out. "How are you awake?" she demanded. "Because," he said, eyes never leaving hers, "I was never truly asleep." The lights threw out. The museum wing flickered suddenly. Alarms blared. The cryogenic system indicators flashed warning signals across the terminal. The preservation fluid began draining from the chamber. "What's happening?" Kyliox's voice crackled through her communicator. "Security systems are reporting massive system failures." Lyridian stood frozen as the preservation chamber's seal hissed open, releasing cold vapor into the room. The human, Orion Vesh, emerged, dripping with preservation fluid, standing taller than her records had indicated possible. "The Dominion declared my kind extinct," he said, voice stronger now, eyes burning with an intensity that made her step back. "They were wrong about that too." He looked directly at her, this impossible survivor of a supposedly vanquished species. "And now Lyridian Ve Tessari, heiress of the empire that tried to erase my people. You're going to help me bring them back." Orion Vesh's muscles trembled as he leaned against the preservation chamber. 67 cycles of pseudostasis had weakened his body, but not his mind. The nanite network flowing through his bloodstream, humanity's last and greatest creation, had preserved his consciousness while mimicking death. "Security will be here in moments," Lyridian said, fingers curling around a concealed weapon. "Whatever you're planning." "If you wanted me dead, you wouldn't have opened my file," Orion interrupted, eyes scanning the chamber's monitors. "The Dominion's sanitized history, the classified genetic reports. You know there's more to humanity's story." The doors slid open. Kyliox entered with 4 armed guards, their neurodisruptors aimed at Orion. Step away from the heiress, Kyliox ordered, mandibles clicking rapidly. Specimen containment has been breached. Orion straightened. I'm not a specimen, I'm a messenger. Lyridian raised her hand. Hold your fire. This human is conscious, speaking after 67 cycles. Doesn't that intrigue you, Kyliox? It should terrify us all, Kyliox replied, never lowering his weapon. The purge was necessary. The archives show what happened to the Viridian Collective when they allowed human integration. Orion's laugh was bitter. Is that what your histories claim? That the Viridians were destroyed by humans? The Viridians were our allies until the Dominion's bioweapons wiped them out, and then blamed it on us. The room fell silent. Lyridian's eyes narrowed. Bioweapons are forbidden by the ancient concords, which is why history was rewritten, Orion said. Easier to blame the extinct humans than admit the Dominion's war crimes. A security alarm blared again. Kyliox's communicator buzzed. Quarantine protocols activated. The preservation fluid, it's contaminated the air circulation systems. Lyridian's eyes widened. Contaminated with what? Not contamination, Orion said. Communication. Before their eyes, the spilled preservation fluid began to shimmer with bioluminescence, forming patterns across the floor. Molecular structures, DNA sequences, star maps. What is this? Lyridian whispered. Proof, Orion replied. The preservation fluid contains a biological archive, the true history of humanity and our final days. The nanites are rendering it visible. Fascination overtook Lyridian's caution. You preserved your civilization's knowledge in your own bloodstream? More than knowledge. Seeds. He held out his hand, where the fluid formed a perfect model of a double helix. My body contains the genetic templates of 10,000 humans. We knew we couldn't win the war, so we became the vessels of our own resurrection. Kyliox aimed his weapon. The human is a bioweapon itself. We must neutralize. Wait. Lyridian moved between them. If what he says is true, your family built its fortune on conquered worlds, Kyliox hissed, including Earth. Orion's eyes locked with Lyridian's. Your empire was built on genocide and lies. Help me reveal the truth, and I'll show you technologies your scientists can't imagine. The ship suddenly lurched, throwing them all off balance. Emergency lights bathed the room in crimson. The museum wing has detached from the main vessel, a computerized voice announced. Automated defense protocols engaged. Orion smiled grimly. I spent 67 cycles in artificial sleep, communicating with your ship's systems through the nanite network. Preparing. Lyridian stared at him, realization dawning. You weren't purchased. You allowed yourself to be found. I needed resources only someone with your wealth could provide, Orion acknowledged, and someone with reason to question the Dominion's histories. The museum section, now a separate vessel, accelerated away from the flagship. Through the viewport, Lyridian watched her family's ship growing smaller. Where are we going? She demanded. To the veiled reaches, Orion replied, where the rest of humanity waits. The stolen museum vessel shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Before them stretched the veiled reaches, a vast, swirling nebula that scrambled sensors and scattered light into prismatic cascades. For centuries, the Dominion had declared it a navigational hazard, a stellar graveyard to be avoided. Perfect hiding place, Lyridian murmured, understanding now. Kyliox, now restrained but conscious, hissed from the corner. There's nothing in the reaches but radiation and dust. Your human has led us to our deaths. Orion stood at the navigation console, fingers dancing across unfamiliar controls with surprising dexterity. Your Dominion lacks the technology to navigate the quantum fluctuations. We designed it that way. The ship plunged into the nebula's edge, and immediately the vessel's systems began to fail. Alarms blared as radiation levels spiked. We'll be dead in minutes, Kyliox predicted grimly. Orion removed something from beneath his skin, a small, crystalline implant that had been undetectable to Dominion scanners. He inserted it into the ship's main console. Instantly, the alarm silenced. A new navigational interface overlaid the standard controls, displaying paths and signals invisible before. Quantum state navigation, he explained, noting Lyridian's fascination. The nebula isn't random, it's a manufactured defense system. The ship accelerated smoothly now, following a precise path through the swirling chaos. As they penetrated deeper, massive structures began to emerge. Artificial constructs, disguised as astronomical phenomena. Impossible, Lyridian whispered. Our surveys never detected. Because you weren't meant to, Orion said simply. They approached what appeared to be an ordinary asteroid, easily overlooked among the nebula's debris. As they drew closer, portions of its surface dematerialized, revealing a docking bay. Home, Orion said softly. Once docked, he led them through airlocks into the asteroid's interior. What awaited them stole Lyridian's breath, not cramped survival quarters, but a vast, thriving ecosystem. A hollow world within the asteroid, complete with artificial gravity, synthesized sunlight, and sprawling habitation zones. Welcome to Refuge, Orion announced. One of 17 human sanctuary worlds hidden throughout the reaches. Humans, hundreds of them, moved about their daily lives. They paused when they noticed the newcomers, particularly Lyridian, with her alien features. Whispers spread through the crowd. They were supposed to be extinct, Lyridian said, stunned by the reality before her. The Dominion killed billions, Orion acknowledged grimly. But we had prepared. The best minds, the most adaptable genetics, the carriers of our cultural memory. We smuggled them out before the final bombardment. A woman approached, her bearing regal despite simple clothing. Her eyes, the same unusual color as Orion's, appraised Lyridian coldly. You brought a Tesserae heir to our sanctuary, she said, her tone making it clear this was no compliment. The bloodline that financed the Earth bombardment. Valera, Orion greeted her. She doesn't know. None of them do. The Dominion rewrote history. Valera's expression remained hard. And you believe she'll help us when she learns the truth? When she discovers her family's wealth is built on our bones? I believe everyone deserves the chance to choose which side of history they stand on, Orion replied. He turned to Lyridian. The Dominion didn't just defeat humanity. They systematically erased us because they feared what we'd discovered. Biological transcendence. The ability to rewrite our own genetics at will. He gestured to the humans around them, and Lyridian realized what had been nagging at her observer's instinct. Subtle differences in their physiologies. Some had enhanced musculature, others barely perceptible gill structures beneath their jawlines. Still others displayed specialized adaptations she couldn't immediately identify. You've been evolving, she whispered. Directing our own evolution, Valera corrected. The very ability that frightened your ancestors into trying to exterminate us. A child ran past, laughing. A child with subtle facial structures that reminded Lyridian of species from the Andromeda arm. Adaptations that would allow survival in varied atmospheric conditions. Now, Orion said, we need your help to prevent the Dominion from finishing what they started 67 cycles ago. Why would I help you? Lyridian asked, though she already felt the foundation of her worldview crumbling. Because, Valera said, activating a holographic display, the Dominion has located Sanctuary 9. The display showed a Dominion battle fleet approaching another hidden asteroid. Lyridian recognized her family's imperial insignia on the command ships. They're calling it Nebula Cleanup Operation, Orion explained. But they've detected anomalies. Soon they'll find all the sanctuaries. And when they do, Valera finished, they'll eliminate us. Just like before. Lyridian stood in the refuge's historical archives, surrounded by floating holograms displaying Earth's final days. The images contradicted everything she'd been taught, showing Dominion warships bombarding civilian centers while propaganda broadcasts claimed they were neutralizing biological weapons facilities. These could be fabrications, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Valera, who had reluctantly become her guide, gestured to a secure terminal. Access your family's private archives. You have the genetic key. Liridian hesitated, then pressed her palm to the scanner. The system linked to her family's secure network, bypassing firewalls using her biometric signature. What she found shattered her remaining doubts. Private communications between her great-grandmother, Esridian V. Tessari, and the Dominion High Command explicitly discussed the human problem and the need for complete eradication. Resource allocation. Reports detailed the extraction of Earth's rare minerals before the final bombardment. Most damning were the bioweapon deployment orders bearing her family's seal. They needed a unified Dominion, Liridian whispered, pieces falling into place. Humanity's technological advancement threatened their control. Now you understand, Valera said, not unkindly. Your ancestors didn't just conquer Earth. They erased evidence that humans had achieved what the Dominion claimed was impossible. In another section of Refuge, Orion met with the Council of Sanctuaries via quantum-entangled communications. Representatives from 16 hidden worlds debated their next action. Sanctuary 9 has begun evacuation, reported a stern-faced woman, but the Dominion fleet will arrive before completion. We should launch the Genesis Protocol, argued another council member. We've prepared for this moment for generations. Orion shook his head. Genesis is our last resort. We activate it only if all sanctuaries are compromised. What's Genesis? Liridian asked, entering with Valera. The council members fell silent, expressions hostile. Why is she here? Demanded a counselor. A Tessari has no place in our deliberations. Because, Orion said, she's just accessed her family's private archives. She knows the truth now. All eyes turned to Liridian. My ancestors orchestrated humanity's near extinction, she acknowledged, voice steady despite her inner turmoil. They rewrote history to hide their crimes. And now? Valera challenged. Now I want to help prevent history from repeating itself. Liridian stepped forward. My flagship carries enough firepower to defend Sanctuary 9 until evacuation completes. You would fire on your own people? A counselor asked skeptically. They stopped being my people the moment I learned the truth, Liridian replied. But I need to know, what is Genesis? Orion exchanged glances with the council before answering. Genesis is a biological countermeasure, a specially engineered retrovirus that would rewrite Dominion DNA, altering their aggressive tendencies. Mind control, Liridian translated. No, Orion corrected. Empathy enhancement. It would allow them to feel what others feel, something Dominion genetics were specifically designed to suppress in your ruling classes. Liridian's eyes widened. That's why the quarantine protocols activated when your preservation fluid spilled. Your nanites detected the artificial empathy suppression in my genome and began repairing it, Orion confirmed. You've been experiencing unfamiliar emotions since then, haven't you? She had. A growing horror at her discoveries, a compassion for these humans that went beyond intellectual understanding. The change terrified and exhilarated her simultaneously. The Genesis Protocol would force this change on billions without consent, she realized. Which is why it remains our last resort, Valera said. Unlike your ancestors, we still believe in choice. Liridian made her decision. My ship can reach Sanctuary 9 in 46 hours. I'll order my fleet to intercept the Dominion forces. Your crew will question such orders, a counselor pointed out. Not all of them, Liridian countered. Not those who value truth over power. She turned to Orion. But first, I need something from you. What? The complete nanite treatment, she said. I need to be fully free of my genetic conditioning before I face my family's fleet. Orion studied her face. The process is irreversible. You'll never be able to return to your former life. Good, Liridian replied. That life was built on genocide. As the council dispersed to prepare, Valera approached Liridian privately. There's something else you should know about Orion. What? He's not just any human, Valera said. He allowed himself to be captured for a reason beyond finding an ally. What reason? Valera's eyes were solemn. Of all our genetic lineages, his is the most valuable. Orion is the last carrier of the pure Genesis sequence, the original template that will ensure humanity's biological diversity can continue. The last specimen, Lyridian whispered, now understanding the auction catalog's true meaning. The last hope, Valera corrected. Which is why, if you betray us, I'll kill you myself. Lyridian's flagship, the Stellar Ascendant, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the veiled reaches. On the command deck, tension crackled like static electricity. Half the crew remained loyal to Lyridian. The other half, led by Kyliox, had been confined to quarters after attempting to seize control. Incoming transmission from the Dominion fleet, announced Zephyr, Lyridian's newly appointed communications officer. It's the Imperator. Lyridian steeled herself. On screen. Her aunt's face filled the viewport. Imperator Merithra Vi Tessari, Supreme Commander of the Dominion forces. Her expression registered momentary surprise before settling into cold calculation. Niece, she greeted. Your disappearance caused quite the commotion. Surrendering your vessel to a museum specimen, the family council was most displeased. I've accessed the family archives, Lyridian replied, dispensing with formalities. I know what we did to Earth, to humanity. Merithra's eyes narrowed. You've been compromised. The specimen clearly infected you with something. Return to Dominion space immediately for decontamination. The only contamination was the lies I've been fed since birth, Lyridian countered. Your fleet will stand down from its operation in the veiled reaches. Merithra laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. You command one vessel, child. I command 50. True, Lyridian conceded. But my vessel is equipped with something yours are not. At her signal, Orion stepped into view. Merithra's composure fractured. Specimen 700, she breathed. The archivists assured us you were neutralized. Like your assurances that humanity was extinct? Orion replied evenly. Merithra's eyes darted. Between them. Whatever the specimen has told you, Lyridian, is manipulation. The humans were developing bioweapons that would have destroyed our civilization. The only bioweapons were the ones you deployed, Lyridian said. I've seen the deployment orders carrying great-grandmother's seal. Necessary measures against an existential threat, Merithra insisted. Their genetic modifications were evolving. Beyond our control. Beyond your control, Orion corrected. That was the real threat. A species you couldn't subjugate. Merithra's face hardened. You have 10 minutes to surrender before we open fire. The transmission ended. Lyridian turned to her bridge crew. Battle stations, she ordered. We need to buy Sanctuary 9 more time to evacuate. Orion joined her, at the tactical display. Even with your ship's capabilities, we can't defeat 50 Dominion warships. We don't need to defeat them, Lyridian replied. We just need to delay them. She activated a secure channel to the engineering deck, where Valera had been working with the human technical team brought aboard from refuge. Is the modified nanite delivery system ready? Lyridian asked. Ready, Valera confirmed. But it's not the Genesis protocol. This is merely a demonstration version. Temporary effects, limited spread. The tactical display blossomed with warning indicators as the Dominion fleet approached in attack formation. Imperator Merithra is hailing again, Zephyr announced. Ignore it, Lyridian ordered. Begin evasive maneuvers. Bring us to deployment range. The Stellar Ascendant surged forward, engines straining as it accelerated toward the heart of the Dominion fleet. Point defense systems activated automatically as the first volley of missiles streaked toward them. Shields at 80%, reported the tactical officer. Hold course, Lyridian commanded. The ship shuddered under concentrated fire. On the tactical display, a countdown showed their progress toward the optimal deployment point, the fleet's central ventilation and life support nexus. They're trying to disable, not destroy, Orion observed. They want the nanite technology intact. Then they're playing right into our hands, Lyridian replied grimly. Another violent impact rocked the ship. Shields at 40%. Almost there, Liridian murmured, watching the countdown. Prepare for nanite deployment. The ship lurched as a tractor beam locked onto them from the Imperator's flagship. Now, Liridian shouted. Valera activated the deployment sequence. From the stellar ascendant's ventral ports, a cloud of microscopic nanites burst forth, designed to infiltrate the Dominion fleet's connected life support systems. Nanite cloud dispersing, Valera reported. Uptake beginning in Dominion vessels. On the tactical display, the cloud expanded, carried by the fleet's own air circulation systems from ship to ship. Unlike the Genesis protocol, this deployment wouldn't permanently alter the Dominion crews, but it would temporarily disable the empathy suppressors engineered into their genetics. For the first time in generations, the Dominion soldiers and officers would feel the full weight of their emotions, including remorse for atrocities committed. Incoming transmission, Zephyr announced. It's from multiple ships in the Dominion fleet. The view screen split into sections, showing confused and distressed officers from various vessels. Some were weeping, others appeared frozen in horror. What's happening to us? Demanded a Dominion captain, voice trembling. You're feeling, Liridian answered simply. Perhaps for the first time in your lives. Marithra's face appeared, contorted with effort as she fought against the nanite's effects. What have you done? Given you a glimpse of the truth, Liridian replied. This is temporary. But the Genesis protocol isn't. She gestured to Orion. He carries the means to make this permanent throughout the Dominion. Unless you withdraw your forces and acknowledge humanity's right to exist, you're blackmailing the entire Dominion, Marithra gasped. No, Orion interjected. We're offering you a choice. The same choice you never gave humanity. Through the viewport they could see the Dominion fleet falling into disarray as crews struggled with their suddenly unfiltered emotions. Ships began powering down weapons systems or drifting out of formation. Sanctuary 9 reports evacuation complete, Valera announced quietly. Liridian nodded, then addressed the fleet again. Return to Dominion space. Tell the High Command what happened here today. Tell them humanity isn't extinct, and we aren't seeking revenge, just acknowledgement and peace. As the nanite effects began to fade, the Dominion fleet slowly regrouped. One by one, the ships turned away from the veiled reaches. Marithra's face appeared once more on the view screen, her expression haunted. This isn't over, niece. No, Liridian agreed. It's just beginning. 3 months after the confrontation, in the veiled reaches, the Sanctuary Council convened in a new location, a terraformed moon orbiting a gas giant deep in neutral space. Representatives from all 17 human sanctuaries gathered physically for the first time in generations, no longer forced to rely on quantum communication. Liridian stood at a viewport, watching shuttles arrive from across the galaxy. The nanite treatment had completely transformed her physiology, her once scaled skin now smooth, her 6 fingers merged into 5, her iridescent eyes now showing hints of that unusual color shared by Orion and Valera. She wasn't human, but she was no longer fully Tesserae either. The Dominion delegation has arrived, Orion announced, joining her at the window. Below, a sleek diplomatic vessel bearing modified Dominion insignia docked at the spaceport. My aunt actually came, Liridian observed, surprised despite herself. The nanite demonstration affected her deeply, Orion replied. Even temporarily unleashed, empathy is a powerful force. The peace conference represented the first official acknowledgement of humanity's existence in 67 cycles. Following the incident at the Veiled Reaches, civil unrest had erupted throughout Dominion territories as rumors spread about the truth of humanity's extinction. Faced with internal rebellion and the threat of the Genesis Protocol, the High Command had reluctantly agreed to negotiations. Are you ready? Valera asked, approaching them. Liridian nodded. As ready as a traitor to my species can be. Not a traitor, Orion corrected. A pioneer. They proceeded to the Grand Council chamber. Hundreds of representatives from both sides filled the room, creating a stark visual contrast. The uniformity of the Dominion delegates against the diverse adaptations of the human sanctuaries. Imperator Marithra Tesserae, stood at the center of the Dominion delegation, her posture rigid but her eyes revealing an inner conflict. When she spotted Liridian's transformed appearance, shock briefly crossed her features. "The conference will now begin," announced the neutral arbiter, a representative from the Arcturian collective. Orion stepped forward first, his voice carrying across the chamber. 70 cycles ago, the Dominion attempted to eradicate humanity because they feared what we had become. Today we offer the hand of peace, not because we've forgotten, but because we've evolved beyond vengeance. Marithra responded with practiced diplomatic precision. The Dominion acknowledges historical inaccuracies in our records regarding the human species. We come seeking mutual understanding. The carefully worded non-apology drew murmurs from the human delegates, but Orion raised his hand for calm. "Understanding begins with truth," he said. "I propose a demonstration." At his signal, Valera activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a DNA sequence, complex, beautiful, and unlike anything the assembled delegates had seen before. "This is the Genesis sequence," Orion explained. "Not a weapon as you feared, but a gift. The culmination of humanity's genetic research before the purge." Marithra tensed. "The bioweapon you threatened us with." "Not a bioweapon," Liridian interjected, stepping forward. "I've experienced it firsthand. It doesn't control minds or diminish intelligence. It simply awakens what was deliberately suppressed in our evolution." She turned to address the entire assembly. "The Dominion engineered its ruling classes to lack empathy, to make conquest easier, to allow us to subjugate without remorse. What the Genesis sequence does is restore that capacity, allowing for true choice. And you propose to inflict this change on our entire civilization?" Marithra demanded. "No," Orion said firmly. "We propose to offer it as a choice." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "Impossible," a Dominion scientist declared. "Such genetic manipulation would require targeted neurological recalibration at the quantum level," Orion finished. "Precisely what humanity achieved before the purge. The very advancement that frightened the Dominion into attempting genocide." Liridian addressed her aunt directly. "You felt it, Marithra. When the demonstration nanites temporarily disabled your empathy suppressors, did you feel diminished or expanded?" Marithra did not answer, but her silence spoke volumes. "We propose a new beginning," Orion continued, "a gradual integration of our peoples. Those who wish to experience the Genesis transformation may do so. Those who don't won't be forced." "And if we refuse this arrangement?" Marithra asked. "Then humanity will emerge from hiding anyway," Valera said. "Our sanctuaries can no longer sustain our growing population. We won't remain shadows in the veiled reaches." A tense silence filled the chamber. Finally, Liridian stepped into the space between the delegations. Neither fully human nor fully Tessari, she embodied the possibility of integration. "I stand before you as living proof that change is possible," she declared. "I chose to embrace the truth, however painful. I chose to evolve beyond the limitations my ancestors engineered into me." She extended her hand, 5 fingers now instead of 6, toward Marithra. "The question isn't whether humanity will rejoin the galactic community. The question is whether the Dominion will join us in creating something better than either could achieve alone." Marithra stared at the offered hand. Generations of engineered prejudice warring with the lingering effects of temporarily unleashed empathy. Slowly, with the eyes of both civilizations upon her, she reached out and clasped Liridian's hand. "We will consider your proposal," she said carefully. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a beginning. Later, as delegates from both sides cautiously mingled during the reception, Orion found Liridian on a balcony overlooking the terraformed landscape. "You were magnificent in there," he said. "I spoke from experience," she replied. "The nanite transformation changed more than my physiology." "That's why you were chosen," he admitted. She turned to him, surprised. "Chosen? Did you really believe it was coincidence that you were the one to purchase the last human specimen?" Orion asked with a slight smile. Valera spent years analyzing potential Dominion allies. Your psychological profile, your private academic inquiries, your coded communications with outlawed historical archives. They all suggested someone questioning the official narrative. You manipulated me, Leridian realized. We offered you the truth, he corrected. What you did with it was your choice entirely. She couldn't argue with that. Every step, from opening the classified files to undergoing the nanite transformation, had been her decision. What happens now? She asked, looking out at the stars. Now, Orion said, we build something new, neither human nor Dominion, but an evolution of both. The Genesis protocol would never be deployed as a weapon. Instead, it would spread slowly, voluntarily, transforming the galaxy one choice at a time. Humanity had not just survived, it had transcended. And Leridian Ve Tassari, once heir to an empire built on genocide, would help lead the way. His kind was extinct, she murmured, echoing the auction catalog that had started everything. But perhaps that was always the plan, to become something more. Orion smiled. Evolution isn't about preservation, it's about transformation. Below them, delegates from worlds that had been enemies for generations continued their tentative conversations, taking the first steps on a journey that would reshape galactic history. The last human had indeed been found, and with him, the seeds of a new beginning.